Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of Not Alone Today podcast. My name is Joseph.
And I am Anu Ola.
Happy New Year. So glad we made it into 2021.
Yay!
Yeah. For very many people, 2020 was a year they couldn't just wait to be done with. Towards the last few days of the year on Twitter, on social media, I kept seeing all these different posts of, I just can't wait to get out of 2020. I just can't wait to escape 2020 in that sense. Understandably so, the world has suffered a pandemic that literally disrupted rhythm for the whole globe in a manner of speaking. But that notwithstanding, actually 2020 felt like an exciting year for me.
Adventurous.
An adventurous, that's the word. An adventurous year for me as a person, for us as a family. I want to believe the same for my wife. So we thought, let's do an episode as we begin 2021 to first of all press pause and reflect back on that really adventurous year, and tease out a few of the lessons or takeaways for us from our experience in 2020. So let's start with you.
Okay.
What stands out?
The first one is about mothering, like being a mother, and
What aspect of that?
growth. Like, I failed to see how much growth was happening until they say something, and I think, how did you learn how to say that? So, for example, our first is very fussy with food.
Yeah.
Like, it would examine the food very thoroughly before it takes it from you. But recently, we were having lovely pando and vegetable soup. And it peered into our plate and said, I want some meat. At first, I thought, maybe he's just joking. This meat we call shaki in Nigeria. It's a very sumptuous meat. So I took a bite of it and gave it to him, and he ate it. That was when it dawned on me, like, oh my gosh, Joshua is eating shaki. Joshua is actually eating meat from a vegetable soup. Hey, so that made me feel like, oh, he's grown.
Yeah.
Because if Kola had said, Anu, let's give Joshua a bite of the shaki, I would say, he would never take it. Like, I would assume on his behalf. But 2020 actually it brought us closer. Like, it took away all of the assumption and stripped away all the defenses we put around ourselves. And I was able to see things more clear. I was able to witness growth in a very miraculous way. Our second, being definite.
1 year old, by the way.
Oh yeah, he's saying things like, come on, mommy, let's go. But thinking, who taught you to say come on? And things. So yeah, 2020 brought growth very close to me, and I enjoyed witnessing it.
That's beautiful. Just to piggyback on that point to say, actually, that's the same thing that happens to us, even as adults. Like, we're growing every day in different aspects, really. So your spiritual walk with God, your finance, we're maturing, but we don't get to see it until you take some decision or you find yourself saying something, and then you just wonder, when did I start thinking and talking like that? When did I start prioritizing this over that? When did I become so wise?
That's the word, yeah.
When did I start sounding like my parents would have sounded
God bless our
20
parents.
years ago? So yeah, life is happening and we're growing every single day. So yeah, that's a beautiful one. For me, right from January, I remember specifically on the 10th of January, that was the day that it became exactly 10 years when I launched my first book. And so I decided to just write a post. Are you called to write? That was the title of the post. I just put that out there to give an expression to my journey into discovering my gift of writing and how that has played out over the years. And I just left it out there as a blog post, and I was surprised that actually a few people started reaching out based on that to ask about writing, just getting more up close and personal into the details of what that looks like, and then asking me to journey along with them as they become better writers. This has been a dream that I've had. A dream of not just being a writer, but also being able to help other writers one way or the other. But I never see that happening anytime soon. I just thought that's something that would happen after I've been able to write a bestseller, put out a book that everybody's reading. Yeah, then everybody can start listening to what I have to say. But 2020 taught me that actually so very many things that we have as hopes and dreams, God has this interesting way of leading us into them in bits, gradually, in a non-dramatic way. Many of the things you're praying for now, the error you could make is to be expecting that it will happen like a big bang. God is in the mundane. God is in the gradual. God is in the growth. Just like Anu was talking about unnoticeable growth. I was able to spot this after like the third or fourth person, everybody calling me to ask about the same thing. And I was like, what's going on here? When did I suddenly become a magnet to upcoming writers in that sense? Yeah, that was one of the discoveries of 2020 to me, to say your future hopes and dreams are not always in the future. As you are journeying day in, day out, God is gradually giving you a soft landing into many of the things that you've been praying for. So I'm excited about that and to see how that plays out in subsequent years.
Yes, that's nice.
A second point, if any.
Yeah, my second point is on, like, 2020 taught me balancing working from home and taking care of the family, or paying attention to my family during working hours. When I started, I had this, I want to qualify with an adjective that is funny and a bit weird. I had this, not notorious.
Outrageous?
Yes. I had this outrageous belief that working from home means staying alone in a 4-wall room by myself with 2 screens, with nobody interrupting me from 9 to 5. I only choose when to come to you guys, I mean to the family. Nobody should come to me. It was literally outrageous, now that I'm thinking about it. But then I thought that was how it should be, and I worried so much. Say for example, when I'm in the room and I'm dealing with some queries, and maybe Joshua comes in, and my heartbeat would just keeps like palpitating, and I'm thinking, what do you want? Go and meet your dad. But this people kept telling me, I know everybody understands the current situation. You're not like a robot or a superwoman. But it took me a while to understand that. So over time, I began to be flexible. So I realized that you can actually work from your children's bunk bed, from the top part. You can run to the backyard to pick a call and just say, hello, this is Anu, and run back in. You can literally work anywhere. I found rest. Working from home and taking care of my family in 2020. At first, it was a struggle, to be honest. At the end of the day, sometimes I feel guilty. I feel guilty of not doing so much work, and I feel guilty at the same time of not giving so much attention. So it was just a roller coaster of emotion every day until I just thought, I know, I beg chill, and that worked for me.
Yeah, understandably so. For the whole world, we didn't have a dress rehearsal in a sense for the kind of massive disruption that COVID-19 brought. But I think looking back in retrospect, you figured it out and managed that well. I think I'm proud to say that, in my opinion, you've been very efficient. You've been... And I'm not saying this because this is a podcast, so don't let your head start getting big. You managed it really well, to be honest, and I'm impressed. And I keep wondering, how does she do that? Like, I'm bad with time management, and that's one of my takeaways from 2020. Like, or maybe it's not I'm bad with time management. Maybe it's just that I've said yes to too many things, and I should learn to say no more. Because obviously, with the rhythm that we settled in the course of working from home and all that. My working hours. Oh, goodness. My working hours are literally whenever I wake up, and hopefully I desire to wake up by 1 a.m., sometimes 2. And once I'm up by 2 a.m., I'm not back to bed again. By 5, one of the boys will be up to come and join me. And once I see either of them come to join me in the living room to work, I know my work time is over. So, and for the rest of the day, it's almost impossible to settle down and do something for a long stretch or stuff like that. So yeah, it's always looking like there's so much piled up to be done, so much left unattended. But I think, yeah, in this year, one of the things I want to look into doing is to say no more to things that I need to say no to, so that I can focus on the things that I really need to say yes to.
Which is ironic, because 2020 is the year where
you had all the time.
Yeah, that I said yes to more things that are more pastor wifey kind of things.
Pastor wifey.
Like, the thing is, when I met Kola, I knew what I was going into. Like, I knew that this is spotlight, and I didn't like spotlight. I'd always felt as though I was underqualified if I go over my commitment issues. But this year was actually the year where people started inviting me to come talk about things. I'm thinking, hey, are you guys sure you want me to talk about this? Like, I'm going on Facebook Live to talk about. That was the first one I had this year. The lady actually first told me that, Ma, would you like to come for an Instagram Live thingy? And for me, my Instagram, I have top preachers and things. So they kind of set the pace. So imagining myself speaking on Instagram Live where those people had been, I was afraid, basically. I was scared. Thankfully, a few days to the event, the lady told me by his Facebook Live. I felt, yes, that's good. Facebook is still manageable. I felt like I had control over Facebook than Instagram. So that was my first, and it went well. And from that, from saying yes, I know you want to say no more, but from saying yes to that, I had other lots of speaking engagements, like WhatsApp group, people asking me questions. Like, I began to live Kola's life without feeling the pressure. It was as though God has built me. It was amazing, to be honest. And the thing is, when people ask you to speak, you learn to study God's word more. Obviously, if you go and say something that you're not sure about, it will show. So it was beautiful for me. So I learned to say yes more to the things I would naturally say no to. But you should learn to say no to things you would naturally say yes to.
Yeah,
it's been a beautiful year.
The season I'm in now is such that in the year I'm doing a master's. I started another pioneer school in the midst of all that. I'm writing books. I'm editing lots of things. A live mentorship group is there. It's just so much, and of course, top on the list, church. So it was quite a year with
you had lots
of things, but yeah,
and I think good. Because you're popular, people like you.
I'm not popular,
you know, because you have this nice way of not saying no, so they keep coming, and I like it. It makes me laugh sometimes because I do it to you too. When I know you will say no, that's when I'll come with this ludicrous suggestion to say, oh, can we have Chinese tonight? When I know that.
Are you guilt tripping or feeling a remorse for those orders you just made that shouldn't have been made? She just made some orders that are so. Let's not go into that. And then she came and said, actually I did something. As if when she was pressing the order button, she didn't know what she was doing. But she knows I won't say no.
Yeah,
it's my year to learn to say no more. So
to me,
no, I'm just saying.
The Bible doesn't say you say no to me. I'll quote Bible for you if you say no to me. You can say no to other people, but not to me.
Okay.
And not to money.
I comment myself.
Yeah, you mentioned something about church. Yes, 2020 actually made serving in church much more interesting for me. Exciting. Like, I was able to pour so much into my the unit I belong to, and it was amazing, and I learned a lot. Like, sometimes we don't see the value in serving in church. We just think it's this God thing. But to be honest, serving in church is like serving in any other organization. You build skills from there. Skills you can proudly go to interviews and say, oh, I lead. You don't have to say I lead prayer units. You can say I lead a group of people and we achieve goals, and you're able to increase attendance or participation by 30%, and that could be evangelism they're trying to say in a coded manner. Like, church is a building ground for us to gain lots of skills, especially if you're not like a networky kind of person, or you don't like putting yourself out there. By serving in church, by if I don't know if ushering is applicable because of COVID-19, but whatever you do,
usher online.
You usher online. Let's say, welcome to Zoom church online or something. But whatever you do in this, like,
you usher from the chat room. It's possible.
Yeah. What would you say to people?
You'd be private chatting them to say you're welcome. You can say, depending on what platform you're using.
I suppose. Yeah, but for me, I gained a lot of skills in 2020 from church service.
Yeah.
And this is not just, we didn't go in person physically.
Yeah.
We were all on Zoom, but the organization, getting things sorted in the background, really, really built something in me that I can't put words to, but it's so, like, I feel liberated from the task and everything. So that's what I learned from 2020.
One of the things that stand out from 2020, I think for everybody basically, is the power of technology. And that necessarily then begs a proper stewardship of that as well. We've been used to the norm in different areas of life, only to discover that what we thought was normal doesn't necessarily have to be normal. I mean, now as a church, we are beginning to have conversations at the leadership level as to what parts of our adaptations need to remain permanent. I mean, in some other parts of the world, people are going back to church already and stuff, but here in the UK, there's still a whole lot of restrictions that still makes us continue meeting online. I mean, it's still safer, really, to meet online in our own context, church context particularly. But then when the time comes to go back into the building, what happens to all of this usage of technology and all that? Which parts of that needs to stay? Which part of that needs to be reshaped? Which parts of that needs to be let go of? That's one of the conversations we're having at the leadership level presently. But all that's to say, we saw what technology can do in 2020, and I'm just reflecting back on that to say that you and I, all of us, need to start thinking strategically as to how to steward that gift. Of course, we know that technology is not all good, neither is it all bad. It's just neutral. It's what you do with it. It's what you make out of it, in that sense, that determines anything and everything. So use it well, steward it well. Whatever you're doing on your social media platform, make it work. The reason why you're listening to this podcast is also part of the fruits of 2020. We just dawned on us that, okay, God has given us this desire to do something like this. We've been trying to figure out how best to do it, but 2020 made us know you can do it as a podcast starting from home. And
I have one final point. Not being too hasty to post things online on my social media. Sometimes, I'll be reading a post just from the first few lines because I find it so interesting. The next thing I will do is I'm sharing it on my Facebook. And the thing is, when I go share it on my Facebook, before I come back again to the post, I have lost momentum. There's a break in between what I've been receiving, like what the Holy Spirit has been trying to teach me from that. And I just break it because I felt God has given me the power to be this Facebook sharer with everything interesting. Like, it was so bad that while my spirit is still like excited from what I'm reading, while I am still taking it for myself, I've gone to share it out, then I come back and I'm confused, like, where did I stop? Sometimes the information you get might be just for you alone at the time. I needed to understand some things for myself. For 2021, you don't really need to share everything you read. It might be that you need time to go through that resource for yourself. It's okay to be selfish in that sense. If you're not being led to share, don't be too share. Because if you notice some people are struggling with screen time, like some people are struggling with staying away from their phone. And the reason they are struggling is because there's so much content online. If you and I stop posting so much, then they scroll through their Facebook and see that they've seen the same post 20 times. They won't pick up their phone for the next 20 minutes because there's nothing else to see. But because we all keep piling information, many people stay on the phone. There's no wisdom in reading through like 10 Facebook posts under 20 minutes. There was the assimilation. But if it's one thing you read and there's nothing else to read, there's no old university schoolmates that just giving birth pictures to see, you put your phone down. So I'm just saying, let's curtail our sharing. It might sound a bit anti-productive, like we should share and help the world to know better. We do know better. There's so much content out there. You don't have to be the sharer. So let's learn. Like, hopefully, I'm talking to myself again because it still happens once in a while. Pick what you share, pick what you retweet, pick what you post, pick what you put on Instagram. It doesn't have to be everything. Some articles could just be for your own safekeeping. Save them on your desktop or on your phone to revisit later. You find that most of the things you found exciting last week, this week you've not gone back to them. There's a blog post I read on the Gospel Coalition that says that the best thing for us to do is to read historic books, like go back to old ancient books and gain more wisdom from there. So how can when will you even have the time to go back and read historic book or biographies of people when there's so much Facebook and Instagram people putting pictures up there? So God help us this year to just incubate those things. Let it grow, nurture what you have. Is that a Bible verse that says you find a treasure? When you find a treasure, you sell everything you have just to get that treasure. Just hold it to yourself. Like, no, you don't want anybody to share this thing. And when it's time to share, trust me, the Holy Spirit will lead you on what to share and how to share it. God bless you.
Amen. Yeah, so I learned this thing you're talking about from Brother Biliakoni many years ago when he was talking about Mark 3:14, where Jesus appointed the 12. In the NIV, it says that he appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. And his emphasis was on the fact that the primary reason why he appointed the 12 is first and foremost so that they can be with him, be with me. And then if I choose, I can send you. And so it's not every time that I will send you, but what I want above all things is just be with me. Learn from me. It says in Matthew 11:28, come unto me all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your souls. But it goes on to say, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Learn of me. Very many times that we are sharing stuff, it's not even taking root with us. It's not exactly fully blessed to you. Let it simmer. By the time you are then sharing, you'll be sharing from a point that is more anointed in a manner of speaking.
This thing happens to me. Sorry to cut you. This thing happens to me on Twitter. When I want to retweet something, they ask whether you want to retweet with a quote or just retweet alone. When I press retweet with a quote, because I can read and got excited, I'll pause like almost 5 minutes thinking, what can I say? What can I say? Then eventually I'll just retweet because I just go excited and I'm sharing. But sometimes I wish people would come back to me and say, Anu, please, why are you resharing? What do you want us to learn? And just put me on the spot so that next time when I'm this hasty to share, I'll be careful and cautious to say, okay, have I learned anything from this before I share? Yes, just have to say that.
That's beautiful. I mean, there are just so very many lessons we could continue to unpack. I wrapped up the year with the Alive Mentorship Group family by summarizing, if you will, my lessons from the year into some 5 priorities. And the idea is that, I mean, we have this culture we've built over the years whereby at the end of each year we write a letter to the future version of ourselves. And I can anticipate that many people, when they wrote their letters on December 31st 2019 for what they hoped 2020 would look like vis-a-vis the kind of uncertainty we've experienced and the disruptions, their letters would, for very many people, I anticipated that their letters would remain largely unfulfilled. Myself inclusive. I mean, one of the major things on my letter was that I was going to have passed my driving test. I was going to have hopefully gotten a car for the family, none of which had been done. But of course, 2020 became a year in which there are so very many other things that were not even on the radar that were done. E.g., this podcast, amongst many other things. I mean, we published like 3 books. 4 books actually, and there's a 5th one that was almost out last year but probably will be out this month, and on like that. Very many other things that we didn't plan to do but that got done. And so how I saw, or the lenses through which I saw my letter that made it make sense, was to look at the things that we prioritized, what shaped our priorities. And as long as those priorities are in place, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
The first is that we should prioritize faithfulness over success. We live in a world where success has been defined as different things. You get married, you have a car, you have children, you are successful. But really what God is asking us for is faithfulness, not success in that sense. The second one was to prioritize consistent diligence and obedience over results. Very many times and towards the end of the year on LinkedIn especially, I was seeing all these fantastic posts about the results many different people have recorded in the course of 2020. And that's felt like that's good, that's nice, you achieved that, but what happens to those that don't have those results? But the point is, if indeed you've been consistently diligent, if indeed you've been consistently obedient to the instruction per time, that's what God is looking out for, not the result in itself. Moses was instructed to speak to a rock. He struck the rock twice. And of course, what came out of that? Water came out. So the result was good. That was what the people wanted. They needed water, they got water. The result was there. But the method, the attitude, the posture was disobedient to start with and far from what God wanted. And so even though the result was there, that wasn't what God was looking out for. So prioritize your diligence, obedience, and your consistency in obeying Him and diligently over just trying to get results. And then the third one was to prioritize divine timing over speed. Speed, of course, is a relative term. What you're calling fast, someone else is calling slow, and vice versa. And so rather than just wanting to get it done, I want these 5 things this year, just trust that God will do what He desires when He desires it best. In other words, He knows better than you. He's going to bless you. He's going to bless the works of your hand. But those blessings come in His time, not your time. He says He makes all things, Ecclesiastes 3:11, He makes all things beautiful in His time. The fourth one was to prioritize fulfillment over money. By the time I wrote Pandemic Joy, for instance, which was an obedience to a specific instruction when COVID-19 started, that book was ready within few weeks, just 3 weeks thereabouts. And eventually I couldn't get it published on the platform I would normally use, Amazon, because then they didn't want anything that has pandemic or whatever to be published. And so naturally, because my focus is not on making money from it, it's not like I'm trying to leverage on the market of pandemics that is out there. I was able to just open a website, put the book there for free for people to download, and I could afford to do that because my priority is fulfillment, not money. And of course, eventually some people decided to donate, which wouldn't even, I got more than I would have gotten from at least my frequency of getting royalties from Amazon, because some people felt blessed and decided to reward that. But the priority was on the fulfillment, not on the money. And lastly, is to prioritize contentment over every other thing. Bible says godliness with contentment is great gain. So that's kind of like the lenses that God afforded me to look at 2020 through. And when I read my letter on December 31st, I wasn't disappointed, really, knowing that I got my priorities right. Thanks for tuning in for this episode. We're really glad you joined us.
Yes.
And we will see you in the next episode.
Yes, God bless you.
Wishing you a lovely 2021. And remember, you're not alone
Today.
God bless you. Bye.
Bye.